Okay, heads up. This episode is not about sewing at all, but it is about sustainability. And if you're interested in growing food, preparing food, making the most of your food, or saving money on food, then I'm pretty sure you're going to get a lot from this one. I'm actually going to be playing you a recent episode from my other podcast, Can I Dig It? Food Growing for Busy People, that I make with gardening expert Pippa Chapman. So if you've grown, foraged, bought or received a large amount of fresh produce, you're going to get a ton of tips and ideas on how to deal with it and not to let it go to waste. As you'll hear, Can I Dig It has a very similar vibe to Check Your Thread, laid back and fun. So if you do enjoy this taster, then please find Can I Dig It in your podcast app and make sure you subscribe. Welcome to Check Your Thread, the podcast that will help you sow more sustainably. But actually, today you're listening to Can I Dig It, the podcast that will help you, a busy person, fulfill your dream of growing some of your own food. My name's Zoe and I'm obsessed with sewing and food growing. I've been blogging about sewing for over 17 years and I'm the creator and host of the popular handmade wardrobe challenge, Me Made May. But, like many people, I've become increasingly concerned about the climate and ecological crises, and I'm looking at the way that my lifestyle contributes to them. So in this podcast, I'm usually nerding out about making clothes whilst exploring how to minimise the negative impact that it may have. But today I'm nerding out on food growing and food prep, and I really hope you'll join me in both these journeys. Hello, lovely one. Thank you for choosing to stick around and listen to something different on the feed today. I very much appreciate you putting your trust in me to deliver you something good, if a little different from the usual Check Your Thread fodder. So, have you had any sustainability wins this week? This week, I've been reminded of how living more sustainably so often very well aligns with living on a budget. In fact, one often follows the other, doesn't it? So, we're pretty skint at the moment. The summer was expensive and there's been a bunch of other unexpected costs that we've had to shell out for in recent weeks. So, I've been freezer diving hard, unearthing all the random leftovers and odd items that have been stashed in there. Plus, I've been supplementing our diet with fruit and veg that I've grown or foraged, all in an attempt to keep food costs down. Here's another awesome sustainability win that was shared in the Check Your Thread Patreon community this week by regular guest, mending expert Gina Wigger. Gina writes, win this week. My husband and I walked past a heater box by our neighbourhood recycle bin a couple of times in the past few days, and we finally peeked inside. It was full of a heater with a broken plastic base. Ian was able to fix the base, so we have another functioning electric heater, and saved a load of plastic and electronics from the landfill. Last week, Steph inspired us to save something from landfill, and Gina jumped right on that challenge, it appears. Congrats to Gina and Ian. So, are you ready to hear an episode of my other podcast, Can I Dig It now? So, apologies if you're already a subscriber to Can I Dig It and you've already heard this one. But it's actually my favourite of the 5 episodes we've made so far, and I think it holds up as the best example of the energy and vibe that we try to deliver with each episode. So, until next week, when I promise we'll get back to talking about clothes, take care of yourselves, take care of your loved ones, and see what you can do for those in the wider global community who really need us right now. Try one of the tactics in the episode to save some food from going to waste, and enjoy. I'm very tired. I went out last night and had some drinks, and I had too many drinks.
Yeah.
Normally I have a 3-drink limit on a school night, but I had 5.
5 drinks. Wow.
I got a bit overexcited.
I don't think I can manage more than 1 at the moment, really. I went out to a festival at the weekend and I had 2 drinks, and that was I could definitely feel it the next morning. I think I'm really not drinking at all. So 2 drinks was,
Yeah, you're a cheap date.
Yeah, definitely. 2 very small drinks as well.
2 tiny drinks. What do you like to drink when you
Well, I used to drink a lot of beer, but generally at home I drink wine. I tend to drink wine now.
Yeah, what colour?
Red. Yeah, I hate white wine. And it's really funny because loads of people just think, oh, yes, woman must like white wine. And I hate white wine.
I hate red wine.
Oh, really?
Well, it's not that I hate it. I don't hate it. I just find it makes me really thirsty and dehydrated.
Okay. Oh, no, I actually hate white wine. So I'll stock up all my bottles. And the next time I see you, I'll give you all the white wine people keep giving me.
It will swap.
Yeah.
Cute. Cool, right.
So So this week we're going to be talking all about how to deal with gluts, because if you're anything like me, you have harvests just coming left, right and centre and you don't know how to cope with them all. So today we are going to cover all the different ways that you can preserve those gluts so that you can enjoy them later in the year.
I am so excited about this. This is ridiculously exciting. Brilliant. Well, I can't wait to get into that. But before, I want to thank some very, very special people who have actually signed up to the Can I Dig It podcast Patreon, a level where they are actually financially supporting us and helping us make it actually happen. So thank you so, so much to Alison, Joanna, Jan and Jen. Thank you so, so much. If you want to see what's going on over at the Can I Dig It podcast Patreon and get involved, you can do so for free, or you can buy us a coffee like these lovely people have. You can go to patreon.com/Can I Dig It podcast and you can Pippa with your questions. You can get involved in the community chat spaces and I share the show notes there, and we're going to put up some other stuff eventually when we've got time, but this summer's quite busy, but we're going to get there. It's a good place to hang out, so please go to the Patreon. So Pippa, how's your week been?
Yes, busy again. Just the usual theme. I think, whenever you throw in school holidays with all of the busyness of normal life, it just reaches a real crisis point. But, we're muddling through. Who needs sleep?
Oh,
so I've been doing last minute book details. So just all like people proofreading your book and then going, oh yeah, there's this obvious bit you've missed out here and that, and it just seems to be just all the niggly bits at the end that I need to sort out. So I've been having that fired at me a bit the last week, which is fine. It's nearly done.
Oh, I can't wait for you though.
It's always such a relief when it's finally done and off to the printers and you can't do any more.
So do you have a title for this book?
Yes, it's called Permaculture Planting Designs. It's a step-by-step guide. So, yes, I will be releasing more details as we get closer to it, but I think until I've actually 100% finished writing it, I'm not quite ready to share too much about it. But yes, that's what it's about.
Love it. I'm very excited. What else have you been up to?
Well, I went to the Northern Green Gathering, which is not far.
That sounds fun.
Yes,
Tell me about
it's
that.
not far from here. I had actually been meant to be going with my daughter, and being a teenager at the last minute, she got a better offer to go to the fair with her friends and her boyfriend. So I went on my own. And it was really nice because it's a small world. The world of sort of permaculture and gardening, and so there was loads of people that I already knew, and I had a lovely time. I gave a workshop all about small scale food forests. It was such a lovely festival. It was really family friendly. There were just kids everywhere. There was loads of craft to do, so I did some coiled basket making with raffia, and there was clay modelling and all sorts of things anyway, so that was really nice.
Oh my god, that sounds amazing. Okay, next year when the tickets go on sale, let me know.
I will.
I'll be there. I'll drag my big one, and I want to make some raffia basket things.
Yes, it was. They even had a solar powered sewing machine station. So,
stop!
They had loads of kids who were learning to sew and mend clothes on solar-powered sewing machines. It was just amazing.
Go.
It was amazing.
Okay.
It was lovely.
I'm there next year. It's happening.
Great. And then just busy with social media after appearing on Gardener's World.
Oh, I'm sorry, what? Sorry, what? Appearing on Gardener's World, you say?
Yes. Well, I found it so hard not to mention it in our past podcasts.
I know! You did very, very well.
So you're not allowed to tell anyone until the moment where you are allowed to tell everyone. And then it's just, I was actually at the Northern Green Gathering when it was on TV on Friday. So I couldn't watch it live, but my lovely family at home were watching it for me and sending me lots of messages. And then just suddenly I had just loads of messages from everybody, it seems, who'd been watching. So that was really nice. Yeah, it was lovely.
So if you are in the UK, where can you see it?
You can see it on iPlayer. So it's on the BBC, Gardener's World, and it's on every Friday night. And it was Now, can I remember the episode number? I will put the episode number in the show notes.
We will, yeah. So it was Friday just gone,
yes,
right?
Friday the 15th, I think, was it? And it's, yes, at the very end of the episode, there is, about 6 or 7 minutes of my garden. But it was lovely to just be able to share permaculture gardening and food forest to such a huge audience. You know, if you're listening in the UK and you're into gardening, you've heard of Gardener's World. And
absolutely.
So, yeah, it was just a wonderful opportunity.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm so happy for you. That's brilliant.
Yeah. So so take a look and yes, if you have any questions that come up from that, add them to Patreon and we can answer them in the next episode.
Amazing. Because you weren't allowed to say about it in advance. And I know how stressful and busy you were getting your garden prepared for the recording. And then the recording got postponed,
Yes.
didn't it? And then you had to go through it all over again. And you had to sort your house out as well, not just the garden.
Yes. It's been a very busy July and into August. So yes, it was a wonderful honour to be asked. It meant that my garden progressed, probably a year faster than it would have done otherwise. But yes, it was lovely.
It's a good catalyst, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So how has your week been, Zoe?
Well, not as eventful as that. I've not appeared on TV. Has been very busy. I've been actually doing a lot of overtime at my fabric company job. They are very busy at the moment and lots of people are on holiday, obviously, because it's the summer. So I have been doing some overtime to pay retroactively for the holiday that I did have. I also did a big old chunk of solo parenting because my husband went away for a couple of days, which I'm so pleased he got to do because he doesn't usually. And I nearly killed my kids, but everyone's still breathing. It's fine. Oh, and one of the things we did when my husband was away is we went to the summer barbecue at the allotment, which was adorable, as you can imagine.
Lovely.
Yeah, it was on Sunday and it was really sunny and just went there and they had a barbecue. You could just for a donation, get a mediocre burger and just sit and just have a lovely chat with some of the other plot holders. My my spirit animal Jane, the lovely woman who has the plot next to mine, she was there, obviously being amazing, and I gave her some figs from my garden at home because she's always giving me stuff and she doesn't have any figs, so that's something I was able to give to her, so that was lovely. What else has been going on? I think that's about it, really.
That sounds like a busy time as usual. And so what have you been up to in the garden this week and what have you been picking?
So you'll be proud of me. I had you on my shoulder, in my ear, and I did manage to find half an hour to an hour down the allotment and I finally tackled the bindweed situation. Excellent. So I got the buckets and I very carefully as possible, got rid of a lot of the bindweed, trying to not accidentally split it and then lose the bits and it become another million bindweed things. And I secretly chucked it on the abandoned plot. Shh. Because I got scared about what you were saying about putting it in the compost and then it becoming a big nightmare. So I put it on the abandoned plot. Shh, don't tell anyone. Yeah, so that was good. I felt very good and I felt very grown up about that. And then what else? I've managed to keep things watered. It hasn't rained here for ages, so that's been a bit challenging. What else has been going on? Lots of harvesting. Fig-a-geddon in my garden here. Fig tree I planted about 3 years ago. Finally this year been producing some almost tennis ball sized figs. Wow. Incredible. I've been getting about I'd say on average 3 a day. I'm the only one that seems to eat them, so smush right in my face. Although when we went away just for one night and I got my neighbour to feed my cat and then I gave her some figs to say thank you because that's currency. And she informed me that instead of just shoving them in her face, she, an absolute legend, baked them with brown sugar and cinnamon. And now I am absolutely obsessed with that idea. But fig season has abruptly come to an end. So I have to wait a year until I can do that for myself. And I'm like, oh my God, that idea is living rent-free at the very front of my brain. And it will be there for an entire year till I can make that happen. So that's happened. What else is going on? So right now, down the allotment, the French beans are done. I've kept a few French beans on the, I want to say vine, that's probably not the right word, so that they can dry out and I can keep the seeds or the beans for sowing next year. Forward thinking. I hope you're proud of me.
Yes, I am.
And then down there's just really tomatoes or anything that's coming off my plot right now. But I'm kind of self-sufficient in tomatoes right now, which feels amazing. Been eating a lot of caprese salads, with so sliced tomato, mozzarella, basil, bit of oil, little sprinkling of sea salt, little sprinkling of pepper. Oh, it's my favourite thing in the world. And the only other thing I've been really gathering is on the abandoned plot, aka my plot, pears, apples, blackberries, just coming to an end, but still some, and raspberries. And I made mystery fruit crumble. I was channeling you when you were talking about mystery fruit jam or mixed fruit jam that you used to make. So I was channeling you thinking, I could make mystery fruit crumble. And it was so tasty. So that was my recommendation. And I didn't actually have the right sugar, so I ended up using the kind of like soft brown sugar rather than caster sugar. So the topping wasn't crispy, but it tasted like fudge, which was just mind-blowing.
That does sound delicious.
Yeah. So mainly eating.
Yeah, sounds like it. Yeah, lots of eating.
So post Gardener's World, what have you been up to in your garden this week? And what have you been harvesting?
Well, one of the nicest things about having to madly tidy your garden up and do all the jobs that you've been meaning to do for ages because Gardener's World are coming is that now I can just sit back and think I've barely got anything to do. There's not that many weeds. So that's been quite nice, yeah.
Nice. So you've been able to actually enjoy your garden.
I have been enjoying it. Yes, it's been nice. In terms of picking, I've been picking a lot of flowers and herbs for herbal tea. I did talk a bit before about sort of how I'm helping with my chronic illnesses with different herbal teas, and so I had a chat with my herbalist about could I actually just grow all of this myself.
That's amazing.
So yeah, she gave me a nice list, so I've just been picking things. So particularly chamomile is something I've grown a lot of this year, because even though it's a tea that we just think of as being like a nice bedtime tea, it's actually really has some amazing medicinal qualities about it. So I've been picking loads of chamomile, which you almost have to do every other day because they don't all flower at the same time. They just sort of keep coming out in little bursts. So I've been picking those a lot and drying them inside. Also some marshmallow leaves and some roses as well for adding some rose petals in. So I've been doing that.
So sorry, are you making like a tea that's a blend of all these things?
Yes.
Or are you making different types?
What I'm going to do is store each individual thing in different jars once it's dried, so that when I want to then blend up maybe a few days worth of tea, I can just think, this week I feel like, these few things, add them all together in a jar, stir them up, and then use that for the week. And then
oh my goodness, you're like a witch.
Yes.
I love this.
I'm really loving all the herbally stuff. Yeah, it does make me feel like a witch, actually.
Oh, I'm so jealous. This is so good. I love this.
So I would love to have a really fancy apothecary cupboard, but actually they're just in a fruit box from the supermarket upstairs in the airing cupboard. But maybe
that's for your future.
Yes,
that's for your future.
I could try and pose them in a really nice way for
the gram.
Yeah. So what else? Oh, courgettes, of course.
Still courgette again.
Still courgettes. Although I did hear about a lovely recipe which I will be mentioning in a little while. That I'm going to give a try. Because I love. To be honest, I do just love courgettes. Cut up into little bits and fried in a little bit of garlic, and that's one of my favourites. And I could eat that every day, to be honest. I'm quite happy to eat that every day. So I'm picking one of those, plums and apples, blackberries and beetroot, because we did grow way too much beetroot, and of course it's all kind of ready at exactly the same time. So we've got about probably 100 or more beetroot
what
to deal with. And tons of tomatoes as well, because we have about 40 tomato plants in the polytunnel.
40?
Yeah, I know it sounds like a lot, but Andrew, my husband, is tomato obsessed, and in the past we have had 80 tomato plants. So this was him being conservative.
Oh, well done. Well done, Andrew. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So yes,
Okay.
plenty of things.
I want him to send me some tomato seeds next year, please.
Yes. Yeah. Great. Yeah. So in terms of wins and fails, wins obviously there's loads to pick. Fails in terms of actually using everything. And also I did talk a little bit before about my calendula. So I picked the non-mildewed calendula, but actually when I put them to dry, even the ones that didn't have mildew or seemingly didn't have mildew, all of them, the flower heads ended up developing mildew on all of the flowers, even after I put them, somewhere warm and well ventilated. And within 3 days, I just had to compost them all. So that was a bit sad because I was hoping to have lots of calendula. But I have got some from earlier in the year, but yeah, and my fails were still not really having enough time to deal with all my gluts.
Right. For me, wins and fails, I think the wins are evident with the amount of delicious things I've been eating.
Absolutely.
The fails, it still looks like, even though I did do some bindweed dealing with, it still looks like a tip down there. I feel like, autumn, right?
Yeah.
We'll do that in autumn.
Yes.
Yeah, that's it really. Awesome. Let's get into gluts. What are we doing? How can we deal with it? How can we make the most of everything that we have been growing or we have been stealing from our abandoned plot neighbour? We don't want to waste it. Nature's happened. What are we going to do with it all?
Yeah, and I think it's kind of caught quite a few people off guard as well this year because things are ready so much earlier than normal.
Okay.
So I think like sometimes we have these normal routines of, when the kids go back to school, we can go and pick all the apples or go on a big blackberrying day.
Yeah, I feel like the blackberries happened very early
yes,
this year.
They haven't. They've gone very early, and so it's almost like there's even more of a big glut all at the same time this year because things have just arrived quite early. So really this is about how we can try and preserve that, because I think sometimes this time of year there's just so much stuff growing that you kind of forget that it's not going to be like that forever. We kind of get a bit complacent and just think, we don't need to worry.
It's so true. I know, it really is. And then you're like, you're halfway through December going, I'd love a courgette.
Yes, exactly. So we want to make the most of trying to store what we have, and there's loads of different ways. And I remember some of my very earliest books that I used to read about gardening, like John Seymour's Self-Sufficient Garden book, and they would always talk about storing stuff by like clamping it, which means basically making a giant mound of like beetroot or potatoes or carrots, covering it in straw and then putting soil over the top, and me thinking, well, that's just never going to happen in the average household. So yeah,
it sounds very medieval.
Yes, well, it probably is how they used to store things in the medieval times, but we have advanced a bit since then. So we're going to talk about all the different ways, and I mean things like all the herbs that I'm picking at the moment, the flowers, but also you can be picking things like your oregano or chives, and you can dry those. So actually drying things is one of the easiest things you can do, because you can just lay them out somewhere, ideally not in the sun, but somewhere warm and with plenty of airflow so that they're going to dry out. And also if you can't quite get them to dry out just through air drying, because I have noticed like the temperature the last few days has gone down a bit. So it
hasn't it?
I haven't been able to dry my herbs as easily as I was a couple of weeks ago.
Not getting the 5 lots of laundry done like I was last week.
No, yeah, exactly. So you can put them in a very, very low oven. So like the lowest oven that you can, with the door open a crack to let the moisture
This is herbs, not your clothes.
Yes, definitely. So that's something that you can do. But you can also, I dehydrate quite a lot of other things as well. So things like apple rings, so sliced apples and pears.
Oh, yum.
Sliced tomatoes as well. So my husband absolutely loves dehydrated tomato slices dipped in cream cheese. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and what is really great about dehydrating things is, particularly like fruit and vegetables, is that once you've dehydrated them, they will store for years and years, even decades sometimes, if you store them in an airtight, container.
So just as they are, do you put oil in, or
No,
what do you do?
just dry them. And the thing is, things like bacteria and molds and all those kind of things, they need a certain amount of water to be able to actually grow and live. So if you dehydrate something beyond the point of them being able to be ruined, and you just put them in something airtight, so that, because if it's not airtight, then they will kind of rehydrate a bit with the moisture that's in the air. So it's a really great way. Like, we make fruit leathers, so that's where
Ooh.
we mix. It's a bit like making a fruit puree or a smoothie, but then you spread it out on a tray and dehydrate it, and it turns into, like, well, fruit roll-ups. Have you had fruit roll-ups for your kids before?
Yes, there's a brand, isn't there? And it's got a bear on the front.
Yes, yeah.
Yes.
So that is basically fruit leather, but in a roll.
Yum! Okay, that sounds amazing.
And that's really nice. And so we did actually buy a dehydrator because we were making loads of this, and particularly apple rings, because my daughter doesn't like to eat wet apple. But if you dehydrate it and slice in slices, she'll eat loads of that. So,
oh my goodness, I buy those in the refill shop, and they're really expensive.
yes,
And I'm thinking, sign me up, because that'll save me a bit of
well,
money.
this is the thing. It was, I think, the dehydrator we bought, and I will put the name of the brand in the description, because it is a really, like, we've had ours now about 10 plus years, and it's still going strong.
How big is it? How much room does it take?
So it's quite big. It's about the width of a microwave, say, but it's deeper than well, you can get different numbers of trays. Ours has got 9 trays in it, because we do a lot, but you can get, I think, like a 3 tray or a 4 tray version. And you can get quite small ones that are almost the size of a pan, or like a steamer stacking thing, so they're kind of more of a cylinder. So you can get smaller ones, but we got one, and an Excalibur one, and we worked out, I think it cost about £300 to buy. But when we were actually thinking about how much money we were spending on fruit roll-up leathers and packets of apple crisps, we actually realised that in the long run it would be a lot cheaper, because we're growing our own produce, to just buy one and dehydrate our own. So
yeah, and you're not getting all that packaging.
no, exactly. And it's lasted such a long time that it works out about £30 a year, and it doesn't use very much electricity, because it's not like heating up like as hot as an oven, because you're not trying to cook things, you're trying to dehydrate them. It still keeps a lot of the nutrients in it, because you're not cooking it, you're just taking the moisture out. So it's still really good for you. So yeah, dehydrating is brilliant.
I imagine that getting one of those is more energy efficient than dehydrating in your oven.
Yes, I would think so, because I think as well, like on the dehydrators, you can be quite precise with the temperature. So it'll be like, are you going to dehydrate at 35 or 37 degrees? So whereas if you're trying to do it on an oven, once you get below sort of 80 degrees, there's usually not even a scale on your oven.
True.
So you can't even tell how hot it is. And yeah, I think because it's designed to be used for dehydrating, it's more energy efficient, I'm sure.
Oh, now I want one of those.
I have seen some people say that you can dehydrate in an air fryer. Some air fryers have a dehydrator setting, but I haven't seen a setting like that. So
okay,
I don't know. So that's one thing that you could try.
Love that. That's exciting.
And I want to talk as well a bit about freezing, because even though it seems like there's not much to say about freezing, you just put stuff in the freezer. When I'm storing a lot of things, I will put them directly in the freezer, because quite often this time of year I barely have time to pick things, never mind to process them. So just for ease, I will put them in the freezer.
Yeah, now you've got a freezer packed full of blackberries.
Yes.
Just saying.
Yes, I do have a freezer packed full of blackberries, and I now have tons of apples, and I'm thinking, should I freeze some of those as well?
I literally have no room left in my freezer, because we only have a small one, and it's all blackberries.
Yeah.
But I haven't had time to make jam yet.
Yes, exactly. So you need quite a large freezer to store a lot of things. And also, a friend of mine, in the storms over the winter, they had a power cut for days and days and days on end because of the storms, and they lost everything in their freezer.
This is horrendous news.
And so they said actually it had made them think that freezing things is not not a very resilient way of storing food, because it just takes one power cut, or for you not to notice that your chest freezer has died because you don't go in your garage very often, for you to lose everything.
Or the kids put the ice cream back in and they don't close the door properly.
Yes, exactly. So, and it uses a lot of power. And I don't know if this happens to anyone else, but quite often you put things in the bottom of the chest freezer and you forget that they exist. So you've spent all that time picking them, packing them, freezing them, all the energy to keep them frozen. And then you find them 2 years later and just think, wow, that's a bit old now. Probably can't eat those.
Yeah, I don't think I want to eat that. Okay, so it sounds like dehydrating might be just pipping the freezing to the post.
Yep.
But yeah, okay, that's interesting. Yeah, no, that's good.
And there's also the obvious things like jams and jellies, ways to use up fruit, which is brilliant. But
if you've got the time.
And also, you're adding a lot of sugar then to whatever fruit that you might have, which not everybody wants to do.
Yeah, also then I always think when you've grown something, it's kind of more or less free, or when you've foraged something, it's more or less free. If you're buying a ton of sugar, it's not free.
No, and it kind of loses that lovely healthy glow that you get when you're eating it. Spoonfuls and spoonfuls of jam is not the same as eating a bowl of raspberries. So no,
because it's better.
Yeah. I do like making jam, and I used to have a business making jam, and lots of people find it quite difficult to get that setting point just right as well, and we did have to occasionally rebrand things as drizzling sauces if they didn't set, and that was us doing it as very experienced jam makers. So
okay, can we do an episode one day where you just talk about your experience as a professional jam maker? I would be obsessed with that. Can that happen?
Yeah, well, I have to admit that I used to get so frustrated with it that I mostly got Andrew to do the jam making.
Okay, we'll get him on.
Yeah, he can talk.
We'll interview him about jam making. I love this. This is going to happen.
Well, he learnt jam making from his nan, so he had loads of experience. She used to make all sorts of amazing different jams, gooseberry and elderflower and things like that. So
I want to hit all of this.
Yes.
This is great.
So jams and jellies are brilliant, but adding lots of sugar. Then there's pickling and chutneys. And I personally love chutneys. I eat them with everything, and it is a great way to use up courgettes and apples and things like that. But there's only so much chutney that you're going to eat in a year.
But don't you think that things like that, like jams and chutneys, make really good currency?
They do definitely. And I think a lot of gluts, either you can try and give people things, when they're fresh, like here's a bin bag full of courgettes.
Yeah, but if they've already done their meal planning or their weekly shop, I don't think they're necessarily going to be into that as much as here's a delicious jar of chutney, nom nom nom.
Yes, and I have done it before where I've made up sort of mini hampers for family members where there's jams and chutneys and things like that in. So they make really great gifts.
That's adorable.
But I do really love chutneys, and if you haven't got time for standing around stirring a pan of chutney forever, you can just do pickling, which is where you just basically heat up some vinegar with maybe some pickling spices in, and you chop up your whatever it is you're wanting to preserve, and you just put that in a jar, pour the vinegar over. I mean, it gets difficult when you get into things like bottling. So what in America they call canning, quite often in the UK we call bottling. And
okay, explain that, please.
So really it just means that you are, and it's a bit confusing because we call it bottling, but usually it's putting things in a jar.
So it should be called jarring. It shouldn't be canning or bottling.
Yes.
Both wrong.
So this is where you put something in a jar. So it could be vegetables, so it might just be like beans, or it could be like plums or something like that, and you put them in with a liquid. So it could be like pears in sugar syrup, or it could be beans with a little bit of kind of vinegary water in, or in a brine, with salt. And then you put those into like a water bath, so the entire jar is covered in water, and so you're sort of pasteurizing them in a way.
Right.
And so that kills off all the horrible things that might grow in there, and then you can then store that for a long time. And so in a way that can be a really great way to store things without, like say, without having to add loads of sugar, or like with pickling, obviously everything tastes of vinegar, but because you can use a slightly watered down vinegar for a lot of the bottling, then it doesn't necessarily have such a strong taste. But it's a bit more complicated because you've then got to have a massive pan, or a pan big enough to put your jars in and completely cover them in water, and you have to follow recipes very carefully to make sure that you've cooked it for long enough in the water to make sure. So if you're going to do any canning or bottling, make sure that you follow a recipe properly and don't be blasé about temperatures, because that is really important. We don't want anyone to get, food poisoning from that. So it's just like if you're wanting to make like a passata or something like that from your tomatoes, then you do a similar thing with that as well. That's just kind of bottling tomatoes really. So you can just chop them up like you would find in a tin tomatoes, chop them up. But with all of these things you have to, so that's why when we preserve, we add in things that really are there to stop the bacteria or molds from growing. So things like sugar or salt or vinegar. So those are all in there, or citric acid, and they're in there to preserve things really. So you have to make sure that you follow a recipe and that you add in the right amount of what they say. So when we're doing tomatoes, we will add a bit of citric acid in to make sure that the tomatoes are acidic enough so that when we put our jars of passata in a cupboard, not in a fridge and not in a freezer, but just in a cupboard, that they're not going to then grow all sorts of horrible things in them to give us food poisoning.
Yeah.
But it is particularly now when the tomato, we grow enough tomatoes so that we're eating them, but we're also preserving them at the same time, so that we've managed before where we've gone all the way through winter and spring until the tomatoes start coming again whilst using our own passata.
Oh, stop.
So yeah, that was felt like a really great achievement, because we do have tomatoes in everything, like pizza sauces and pastas and everything. So I think canning and bottling is brilliant, but just to make sure you follow a recipe carefully.
Yeah. Last year, I did do quite a good job of, because I had a lot of big tomatoes, like a lot of beefy kind of ones. I did a lot of making either a pasta sauce or a pizza sauce, but I would always make like a big batch every time and then put half of it in the freezer. So it didn't last the whole winter, but it eked it out, and I felt pretty smug. Yeah. But what was funny is that a lot of the varieties that I grew last year, or the ones that did particularly well, were this kind of, I think they were called White Queen. They were like a kind of very pale green yellow kind of colour. So the sauces looked really unappetizing. It tasted exactly the same, delicious, but it was a bit of a strange kind of disconnect between the flavour and the colour. But
actually green tomato chutney is one of the best ways to use up all your unripe tomatoes at the end of the year.
Oh, love that.
Yeah.
Okay. Can I add something to this glut? Fermenting in honey. I haven't spoken about it for it's been like a week. So I'm just going to mention it again. Fermenting in honey, because honey is naturally slightly acidic. I've now done it to red currants and black currants, and I would do it to raspberries, but I keep putting them in my face instead of storing them long, or in a crumble, instead of storing them long enough to try that. But yes.
Yeah, and actually fermenting was going to be my final one, because I think that we overlook fermenting in terms of ways to preserve a harvest. And what's brilliant about fermenting is that you can ferment all sorts of things. I have been following someone called Sam Cooper. So he goes by
I know him,
Chef Sam Black on Instagram.
Yeah, because he co-wrote a book with Hugh Richards, didn't he?
Yes, he did. And I've done fermenting for a long time, and I have a couple of books on fermenting, but I think that just the way that he writes about it and the way that he experiments and explains it just makes it feel so much more accessible than some of the books and things that I've read before. So I really would recommend his book. And if you want to do a bit of fermenting.
Okay, I'm going to put that on my Christmas list.
Yes,
that sounds great.
Definitely do. And And what I love is, it's mainly Andrew who does the sauerkraut making. So when I first started, I went to a local, it was just like a free Skillshare thing, and someone was making sauerkraut with just sliced cabbage and carrots, and I think we added a bit of caraway seeds, and I was just amazed how easy it was. We just like grated it all up, put it in a bowl, bashed it with a rolling pin for a bit, smushed it between our fingers, added salt, put it in a jar, and that was it. It was like, yeah, just so long as you keep opening the jar to let the gases out, in a couple of weeks you've got sauerkraut. And I was just completely amazed. And yet we then started to try all different, experimenting with different flavours and adding onion or adding, trying out bits of kale and things like that. And everything has a slightly different flavour, and there's just so many different things you can do. And we've made massive batches. So now we liked it so much that we couldn't make it fast enough for how quickly we were eating it. So now Andrew makes 20-litre buckets of sauerkraut, and I actually made him a kraut beater, it's called. So it's almost like just a giant long stick, basically. I cut down an ash tree, a young ash tree, stripped the bark off, and he uses that, and so he'll put the bucket on the floor, and he like gets his big stick and he like pounds it. So it's the idea is that you're kind of breaking up the whatever, whether it's cabbage or carrot or whatever, you're breaking it up so that it's releasing more moisture, because you need that liquid to be able to, when you put it in the jar, you have to kind of pack all of the vegetables below the liquid level. So
yeah, it's like making kimchi, isn't it?
It's just the same as making kimchi. And importantly, you have to add the salt, so you have to get the salt right. And I think there was a recipe of Sam's that I was actually looking at this morning, and on average I think it's around 2%. So the weight of whatever your vegetables and the liquid that they're in, it's around 2% salt. And if you're using a vegetable that doesn't have much moisture in it, you can make your own brine. So you can make up like a water and salt solution that you can then top up your jar with to make sure that things below the liquid. So yeah, I would say for people who have not tried fermenting, give it a go. It is not as scary as you think. And once you start, you just kind of can't help looking around in your garden thinking, oh, what can I ferment next?
Totally. Well, you kept saying when the great thing about fermenting is, and at no point did you say, it makes things taste slightly boozy.
Yeah, that too, yes. And it also, not just preserving it, but the act of fermenting, it kind of can pre-digest the food a little bit, so it can make a lot of the nutrients in it more available to our bodies to be able to absorb it.
It's so good for your belly.
Yeah, it is, for your gut microbiome and everything. It's in so many ways. It's amazing. So
okay, I think maybe we should do a whole episode just on fermenting. I'm going to get that book for Christmas, and I'm going to do some experiments, and I'm going to report back.
Yes, that's a great idea, because I have got I was just thinking, I've got so much beetroot. What am I going to do with all my beetroot? And actually, so just to this is the plan, whether I manage it all or not. So either today or tomorrow, Andrew and my youngest will be pickling some beetroot. We're also going to try adding some grated beetroot to sauerkraut. And we have put some beetroot in boxes in our garage, where you take all the leaves off by like twisting them off. And we've packed them in some quite dry compost, and so in open boxes. So they should be able to store like that for a few months. So that is kind of a more modern...
It's like a mini clamping?
Yeah, it's a bit like clamping, but it's indoors and not outside where all the wildlife is going to eat it all.
Yeah. I'm excited. I want to hear how it all goes.
Yes, brilliant.
Cool. Alrighty, it's time for the section that we call Ask Pippa, aka Pippa Help. So thanks as always to everybody who is in the Can I Dig It podcast Patreon who has been leaving their questions for Pippa, and we have harvested a couple to explore in slightly more depth. So first of all, we're going to hear from Louise. So Louise says, and by the way, I'm quite surprised that Serena's not had a question this week, because I think Serena's had a question every week so far. Anyway, so Louise says, I've got a lovely crop of damsons this year, lucky Louise, but when to harvest them? In previous years, cherries, I've tried to wait until they are slightly soft, but the wasps or birds get them first. I'm planning on jam if I can only beat the wildlife to it.
Yeah, so I think this year has been an amazing year for things like plums and damsons and sloes. The weather must have just been really, just perfect for them. And so they just seem to be everywhere. But I know that also it's the same with cherries, really. Sometimes it's really hard to get there before the wildlife does. I think that the thing is, you can try and pick them a bit early. So before the wildlife gets them, but the best flavour is when they're ripe. So if you can, try and leave them till they are at least a bit soft. They don't have to be necessarily fully soft, but to get the best flavour, you really want to try and leave them till they're ripe.
And they have to be on the tree.
Yes, you can. I mean, they will ripen a little bit off the tree, but they don't necessarily carry on getting that lovely flavour. But if you find that they're just being pecked to pieces or nibbled by wasps, then just, pick them as best you can and hope that what you end up with still has a lovely flavour. So I think, not to say just don't pick them at all. If they're really getting attacked to the point where you've barely got any usable fruit, then just pick what you can and make jam or whatever, when you can. And that's just life, isn't it? We grow all these crops for ourselves, but the wildlife don't know that they are ours. It's just part of their, their ecosystem.
But it was like you were saying in the last episode, isn't it? It's like you kind of want to lose some, don't you? Because otherwise you've got a sterile garden when you're not part of the ecosystem.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, as with anything, whenever I'm picking anything, I always try and leave some for the wildlife. So if there is whatever tree it is, a plum tree, I don't try and pick every single plum. Try and leave.
I only leave the things I can't reach. You go, there you go, nature.
That's fine.
You can have those.
Yeah, exactly. And so really you can tell when they're ripe because when you sort of squeeze them, they will be a little bit soft. So they don't have to be totally squishy. And quite often they'll change colour, but colour's not always a very good indicator because different plums are different colours, so you can't always tell. But I think that's the best thing. And also you might have to keep going back to a tree because particularly with damsons, they're not always ready all at the same time. So just keep going back every few days and picking the ripe ones that you can.
Yeah.
And hope that the birds haven't got there first.
Yeah, I have to say there's a couple of plots down the allotment site where I've got mine, and they have got plums and green gages, and I don't think that they've harvested any, and they're just all on the floor, and it's kind of heartbreaking.
Yeah. Yes, I think
it's like if you don't want them, I'll have them.
Absolutely. And go and ask when we had our own business. Like we would often, if we saw someone's tree in their garden with things falling off, we would just go and knock on the door and say, "Oh, excuse me, do you mind if we come and pick all your plums and we'll drop you off some jam?" So
oh my god, I love that.
Yeah, so just go and ask. Okay. Just go and say, "Do you mind?"
Next year.
Yes.
Okay, so next question comes from Jan. Jan says, my coriander always grows tall with not much leaf and quickly flowers and then goes to seed. I have the same as well. Happy to have seeds, but I'd really like to have lots of leaf for longer. Any tips? Is there a particular type or make of seed or variety that might fare better?
Yeah, so the thing with coriander is it's quite sensitive to being too hot and dry.
Oh, because I'd think that I kind of associate coriander or cilantro with kind of like Mexico or like Indian cuisine, where I kind of assume it's going to be very hot.
Yeah, so ideally, as it gets sort of above 24, 25 degrees, it sets off a process where it starts to go to seed instead. So we want to actually, quite often, like you say, people will think, oh yes, coriander's from hot countries, so we'll plant it in the hottest, driest part of the garden. Actually,
that's what I always think.
The exact opposite. If you plant your coriander somewhere a bit on the shady side, so I'm not saying in complete shade, but where it's a bit more shaded maybe for part of the day, then you will get more leaf production as opposed to seed production.
That's
so
cool.
quite often you will find that you will get the best coriander sort of earlier in the year when temperatures are still not too hot, and then later on in the year as well as the temperatures start to cool down. Whereas in the middle, particularly this year, it's been so hot and so dry that it has been quite, there's coriander's gone to seed really quickly in a lot of places. You can get different varieties that will be slower to go to seed. So there's one called Slow Bolt, SLO Bolt, Slow Bolt. But it's also known as Long Standing. So that's a variety that is a bit slower, and also one called Santos. And so they're two varieties. There's probably more that are a bit slower to bolt. I really like growing one called Green Aroma. That is my favourite for flavour. And I just try and grow it in a slightly shadier place. So this year we actually sowed coriander underneath our kale when we planted out the kale. And so as the kale has grown bigger, it has shaded out the coriander. And it was really noticeable actually that the bits that were kind of much more shaded under the kale stayed leafier for longer than the bits that were on the edge where it got hot and dry and they went to seed quicker. So
interesting.
Yeah.
Well, that was a good experiment. Well
and
done.
also because it just is one of those crops that has leaf for a certain amount of time and then it goes to seed, a little bit like if you're growing lettuce. You know that you're not going to be able to pick lettuce from the same one for, months and months and months. It's just sow a row of coriander every 4 to 6 weeks through
So you've got like succession.
Yeah, right from April through to October. You can be sowing that. And then, so as one starts to go to seed, then the next one should be up enough for you to start eating the leaves off that. So that's a good way to get it year round.
If you've got the space.
And we actually grew it year round in our polytunnel. We had coriander all winter in our polytunnel because we made a hotbed, and that we can go into detail in another conversation. But it's basically a way of creating some heat by composting. You sort of build a kind of compost bed in your polytunnel, or you can do it outside, and it just sort of has a bit of residual heat through the winter.
Oh my goodness.
And it was just warm enough to keep the coriander growing. So
sometimes I'm inspired by you. Sometimes I'm a bit annoyed.
Well, I think
like such an overachiever. I've got coriander all year round.
Well, I think it helps that it's both Andrew and I are doing it, so it's not all me, to be fair. A lot of it is him.
No, I am very impressed. I'm just jealous. Yeah. Exciting. Okay, brilliant. I'm going to sneak my little question in here now. So this is once again on the topic of fruit because it is very much top of mind. So if one is lucky enough to have any fruit trees or bushes or plants already in our garden or growing space, what can we do to ensure a good harvest next year? Sub-question: if we want to invest in some fruit trees, bushes or plants for next year, when is the best time to buy them and plant them?
So if you already have some fruit trees or bushes, and the best things that you can be doing now is keeping an eye out for any sort of diseased or dying bits. So you can just prune those out now so it doesn't spread any further. And also putting down a mulch, which we talked about before.
Yeah, we did. Listen to episode 3.
Yep. So putting down a mulch because that will help to give a bit of nutrition and to keep the soil healthy and alive through the winter. And also, it's a bit tricky really in terms of doing much more pruning. Some people like to do lots of pruning in winter to fruit trees. Other people like to have a more hands-off approach. So I personally like to have a more hands-off approach in terms of pruning. But if you have something like a black currant or a gooseberry or any of the kind of currant bushes, you could cut out some of the older branches because then it will leave some room and energy for some of the like more vigorous other branches that are sort of developing. So they don't fruit on the current year's growth, they fruit on older wood. But sometimes when branches get kind of really old and woody, then they can become less productive. So if you've got some sort of really old woody branches on some of your currants, you could prune some of those out just to try and get a better crop next year.
So Spirit Animal Jane suggested that you, because I've got a little red currant bush, she said her rule of thumb was to prune about a third of it.
Yeah, so you can do. I think the general advice, the kind of RHS advice, is to prune about a third of it out every year. But, I don't always, if I'm honest. I just have a look and see if I think everything looks fairly healthy and vigorous, then I'm inclined to leave it.
Nice.
I have a gooseberry that I haven't pruned in 10 years, and it has a bumper crop every year. So I think...
Flex.
Yeah, I think particularly if you're a busy person, if you can get away with not pruning, then, bonus. Definitely.
So when's the best time of year to prune?
Well, if you're pruning out sort of diseased and dead branches, then whenever you see it,
ASAP,
to get rid of it, so to stop it spreading. You can do winter pruning, and you can do summer pruning, and both of those two do different things. So, if you're wanting to kind of increase the vigor of your plant, you can prune in winter, and if you want to kind of try and reduce the vigor of your plant, you can prune in summer, and that's just kind of a general rule. As I say, ideally there's a lot of new thinking around fruit trees in particular to say actually prune as little as possible, because the more that you interfere, actually quite often they say with apple trees you're trying to prune them into like a kind of goblet shape, so you've got plenty of airflow in the middle and there's plenty of sun to ripen the fruit. But actually when you prune, when you cut a branch, it kind of branches and goes bushier. So if you think you're making loads of cuts in the middle of an apple tree, then the following year you're just going to get more and more bushy leafy growth quite often. So unless you're taking out like quite a big branch for some reason, whether it's crossing branches or something like that, quite often you can end up increasing the amount of leaves in the centre of a tree instead of decreasing them. So I kind of err on the side of not pruning, and I've got some fruit trees in a field from where we previously lived, and we haven't pruned them in about 10 plus years, and they all still fruit fine. So I think people feel like pruning has to be done every year, and actually unless you're doing like espaliered fruit or something really fancy like that, quite often you can get away with very minimal pruning.
Okay, we like that. We're busy people. Brilliant.
In terms of when to buy things, so ideally I always plant bare root, so that means not grown in a pot but just as it's dug up out of a field. Then you usually get it sort of in a bag with its roots just tied up in a bag, and you plant it straight away. That I would usually recommend that, because when you buy something in a pot, the roots have kind of tended to start twirling round and round and round in a pot, and when you plant that, they just never quite grow properly again.
I don't think I've seen them for sale in my local garden centre in a bag.
No, so you would order those online. So
okay. Do you have any good sources for that? Or maybe we should talk about that when we get closer to the time.
Well, I was going to say actually that now is a really good time to start looking, because quite a lot of nurseries will sell out of bare root stuff quite quickly, because around August, September time is when people start ordering them. So actually you do want to be thinking about it kind of now. If you have very specific varieties or things that you want to buy, as from sort of now onwards, a lot of nurseries will start to put things available for order that they will then deliver from kind of November onwards. So actually now is a good time to be looking.
Okay, I'll get my thinking cap on then. Perfect. Well, thank you. Right, so what, Pippa, if we only had time for one thing this week, what are we going to be doing?
Well, I feel like I said this last week as well, but it just seems to be like such an abundant year for just stuff keep growing. So just more harvesting, I think. And I suppose maybe it's very topical for what we're talking about today, is if you're going to do one thing, maybe actually take some time to find a recipe for some of the things that you're getting too much of, I think, because sometimes we can get a bit stuck in our ways of doing the same thing over and over again. And then we just get to the point where our courgettes just sit in the fridge and like slowly shrivel up because we just can't face any more of them. So maybe actually the one thing you could do is try and find a different way of cooking something that you have been cooking too much of.
Oh, I love that challenge. Thank you. I accept your challenge.
Right.
Okay, right. So, Pippa, what are we going to be talking about next episode?
Well, I did, going along with the theme that we've just been chatting about, fruit trees, I did think it would be great to talk about apples because they are abundant at this time of year, and I think it's really good to sort of look about how to grow them, what to do with them, sort of all things apple.
Apple deep dive? Sign me up. Awesome. Brilliant. I can't wait. Well, you take care. Thank you ever so much for all your knowledge, and I look forward to speaking to you soon.
It's been a pleasure as always.
Bye. Thanks so much for listening. I really hope you enjoyed this episode and are left feeling inspired. For more info about the podcast, including show notes for this and every episode, head to checkyourthread.com. I'd love to hear from you, so if you have any comments, questions or ideas for future episodes, please get in touch by emailing zoe@checkyourthread.com or find me on Instagram @checkyourthread. Massive thanks to Patrick Potter for production support, to Sylvia Seller for the awesome logo design, and to Simon at Palm Skin Productions for the music. This ad-free podcast would not be possible without listener support, so if you feel you are able, please consider signing up to the Check Your Thread Patreon. For the equivalent of buying me a coffee each month, you'll be making it possible to continue producing regular episodes. Links can be found in the show notes and on the website checkyourthread.com. I hope you'll listen again next week. Until then, take care. Bye!